Hi everyone, welcome to episode 14 of Track Talk. You may notice I look a little different than what you'll see in the rest of this interview. That's because I forgot to record the intro, so my bad, but here we are, episode 14, and today's guest is Demi Chalkias. Demi is the 2020 GT3 CASC Sprint champ. She also won the GT4 championship in 2018. This year, she's making the step up to pro. She's in the SCCC GT4 class, running a Mercedes AMG with JMF Motorsports. She's absolutely amazing to talk to. She's a great story of what got her into racing, how she's progressed through the sport. We're super excited to have her racing in the series, and she's definitely going to be one to watch out for. Welcome to Track Talk, Demi Chalkias. Demi, what did you get up to in the off season? You're testing a bunch over in Cali.
Yeah, so I'm super thankful to be working with a team that prioritizes testing because seat time is so important. So during the off season, we did quite a bit of testing and I got really accustomed to the car. I felt comfortable with it. And it was just amazing to be working with JMF Motorsports because they know what it takes to go pro and to be at a pro level. And at that level, you're constantly testing, and they didn't treat this any different. So it was really nice to, bank some seat time during the off season, especially being here in Canada. We don't have that privilege. So yeah, it was really good. We worked very hard.
Yeah. So are they JMF? They're based in California?
No, they have a shop in California, but it is a Canadian team. So we have a shop here in Ontario, but they do SRO as well, right? So a lot of what they do racing wise is in the States. So their shop in California is definitely useful for that.
What do you use to practice at home? You get into sim racing?
I've been doing a lot more sim racing. I'm thankful to have Hip Motorsports. They joined forces with me for the year and provided me with the equipment to train sim wise. So I did a lot of their full motion rig, which was really cool. It simulates, I believe, up to 1.5 G's of force. So it's really good in terms of training. You have to get used to it though. The first time I did it, 3 laps in, I was like, I'm gonna puke. Like this is it's much. But after that, your body, just adjusts to it, and it's such a great training tool. And they have many other different simulators that I've been working on. And my boyfriend Connor has a simulator, so if we have any spare time, which is usually at night, whatever, we go and hop onto the sim, do some races. And yeah, so just a lot of sim work, a lot of working out and getting stronger. One thing for me that I noticed in my training with the GT4 during the off season was that I just needed to be stronger. I felt, my biceps and my shoulders, like in front here, like sore when I was working out, and I didn't actually feel that too much when I was racing my BMW. So and just developing the strength in my legs as well, because the braking force is a lot heavier. So it was a lot of sim training, testing, and working out.
Before a race start, what kind of mindset do you like to get into, and how do you maybe channel that?
I get actually pretty anxious before qualifying. I'm usually pretty silent. That's when you can kind of see a massive game face on me, because I think I'm usually pretty bubbly and happy in the paddock. And it's once qualifying comes, it's like, all right, this is game time. Like let's go. And once I can kind of see where I fall and start kind of building a game plan towards it, I start to settle then like into the mentality of like, okay, let's start strategizing, let's have a plan. And I kind of just settle into this really calm state where I know what I'm going out to do, I know where I'm starting, and then just going out there and doing it. So for me, it's like I'm anxious, I'm nervous, I like feel like I'm gonna like puke before qualifying, and then you're just out there and you just do the job, you get it done. And so when you're done, it's like this massive release of like, I did absolutely everything I could. Let's just see where it put me and create a game plan and just go out there and do it.
If you could race in any motorsports era, what would it be, and what would the series or car be?
I really like the old school DTM racing. I would love to race like a 190E or an M330. We had a 190E with the Cosworth engine, the 16 valve with the dog box. And it was the same color that Ayrton Senna drove back in the day. Honestly, it was one of those really cool and unique cars where you just felt like you were in that time. And I grew up watching a lot of that because that's what my dad watched growing up. And that kind of sparked a lot of our passion because my dad was a big E30 M3 guy and we had the 190E. So I would love to go back to that era and go and compete in some DTM cars.
The 90s stuff was like wicked. Jumping over curbs, like two wheeling.
I was just about to say, you watch the races, you're like, how did these cars withstand that? Like, they're literally like two wheels just clobbering like all of the turtles, and like it's just yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Do you have any famous or well-known drivers, past or present, that you've looked up to through your career?
Yeah, Sabine Schmitz was somebody who I really looked up to. Just growing up, I just felt like she was so cool and she was racing the cars that I would have loved to have raced. And, her whole life was motorsports, and she was just somebody that was just out there doing what they loved. And I was really inspired by that. And, it's funny because I was just talking about this in another podcast. I grew up without TV or internet. So it was a little bit difficult. Like when I was like very little, we had TV because we lived in Markham at the time. We had cable, and that's probably why that era of DTM racing is so vivid in my head, because that's what I got to watch. And then when we had moved out to the country, it was you would have to like either be at a friend's house or family friend's house to watch F1 and stuff like that. So it was hard to like find idols and people that you looked up to that were elsewhere in the world, because we didn't have that connection via TV or internet. And so it was a lot of the people that were around me that I was really inspired by, and the people that were I could go and watch. And Sabine Schmitz played a huge role kind of later in life once I started having access to that kind of stuff. But I've always admired Valerie Limoges. I think that she is just an absolutely incredible driver and a great friend of mine. And my coach, Melanie Patterson, who's done all of the prototype racing in terms of like LMP cars. And we have a similar story in the sense that she used to be an athlete in a different sport prior to coming into racing. And her mindset and the way she coaches it's one that I take well to. And then, once you start doing your research, you hear about Michelle Mouton, like Lynn St. James, and like all of these, really cool and might I say like badass. I don't know if I can swear on this, but they were just women that, were just in an era, especially like back then, were just going out there and doing what they wanted and didn't care. So that was really cool for me. So yeah, I inspired by them.
Where did you catch the racing bug, and then walk us through sort of the path to racing the AMG GT4 and the SCCC?
It definitely is a pretty long story, so I'll try to shorten it up. But racing was always a sport that was in my home. My dad used to race at a regional and club level, and it was on TV. It was talked about, it was a sport that I was just raised around, and I was always at the racetrack. Like, my mom has stories of like changing my diaper on the top of corner 2. And like, she remembers because that's when the news had broke out that Princess Diana had passed. And so it's like in her memory. But I have pictures of me 6 years old, with the Michelin Man and stuff. So it was just one of those sports that I grew up around. And on my mom's side of the family, all of my cousins and uncles, they race motorcycles, they race snowmobiles. Like, we are just a motorsports family from both sides of my parents. And when we lived in the country, we had dirt bikes, we had four-wheelers, we had golf carts and go-karts and tractors that I used to love to pop wheelies on. Like, we were just like, there was nothing else to do. So it was like, let's go hop on something and go have fun. Like, it's, that was the household that I was brought up around. But I always loved driving things, and I would do little driving courses on our driveway. Like, I'd set up basketballs and I would hop into the car, and I'm like still in elementary school, and I would try to reverse either as close to the basketballs or through the basketballs. And I knew if I had messed up, because one of them would obviously be rolling away. And so I love driving, but my sport was triathlons. I was an avid runner, figured out that I was really good at biking, and I started doing duathlons and then transitioned into triathlons once I learned how to swim competitively. And my goal in my head was like, I'm going to the Olympics. Like, that was everything to me. And I was training so hard, and I was actually training to do a half Ironman at the time. And I essentially, long story short, blew out the left side of my hip. I was overtraining and not eating properly. And so at 16, that dream and that goal was kind of, shut down and in a sense kind of stripped away from me. And so you go through this process of trying to navigate like what's next, what do I like to do, and how do I identify like what else is out there. And it's a difficult time mentally, but then you realize feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to do anything. And at that time I was volunteering at the track with my dad. He was instructing, and I was just like picking up pylons and catching rides with people, just having fun and hanging out. And then I decided, you know what, why don't I put myself into go-karting? So I took my bike and I biked up to our local go-kart track, Goodwood Kartways, and registered for a ride and drive. And I mean, everything after that is a very long roller coaster of a ride. But eventually I, made it, and I dropped out of school to work more jobs, pay for racing, and worked at my career for about 8-9 years at the regional level. And an opportunity for a documentary kind of fell into my lap, and I showed well there, and I was selected afterwards to fight for a ride in the AMG GT4, and here I am.
Crazy story, and it's gonna be cool how you were talking about Sabine Schwitz as an inspiration. It'd be cool in 10 years or so time when we have girls entering the series talking about Demi Chalkias as an inspiration to get into it. So
thank you. And that's kind of the plan, right? I think that you naturally take on that role when you're doing anything that's kind of different. And obviously being a female in racing, especially when I first started, like it was, everyone keeps telling you like, you're the only girl, like that's so cool, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, yeah, I just thought I was one of the guys like that. My whole life I was a tomboy and I never thought about it. And then, you start to look around, you're like, oh, they're not wrong. And then, Megan Giltz, who's a fantastic open wheel racer, she came into the series. And although she was a different class than me, it was nice to know like, hey, cool. Like there's another girl out there kicking ass, doing her thing in her class. And like that was a win. So I hope to inspire, but I hope to inspire just by doing what I'm doing. Like I just want to be there and give an active example that they can be there too.
absolutely. And it's interesting how you talk about you're almost obligated to be that role model, because I think a lot of people don't appreciate that enough, in the sense that one, it comes with a lot of extra pressure, and a lot of extra pressure that you didn't ask for. And some people might take that as like, oh, they use that to leverage themselves to get in the, and it's like, no, that's, they're in that position because they're the one doing it. They're the only one doing it. And it's not a choice to take on all that extra responsibility and pressure, but they're doing it because they have to continue to grow the sport for others coming up. So
especially with Canadian racing, our goals as Canadian racers should be to want to promote racing in Canada. And that's why series like FEL and, giving us this platform as Canadians to kind of have a place to race, especially at this level, is huge. It's very big for Canadian racing. And I think that Canadians should be super proud of it. And I think that we should be doing everything that we can to promote Canadian racing. And the more that we can do that, the more funding we'll get, the bigger races we'll get, the more fans we'll get. Like it takes a community to make a change. And if we kind of all have that same vision of, where we want to take Canadian racing and work together to promote it, that's when you're going to start seeing change. And that's when, perhaps Canadian racing will be where it is at the States level or, in Europe. So there's a lot of really good talent in Canada. There's no lack of that. Like we have the talent. We just need the place to race, and we need people to support that type of racing so that we can continue work here.
do you want to talk a bit about your relationship with your new team? I know you've just joined them, but you've gotten to know them, I'm sure, pretty good over the winter. And
so I'll be racing with JMF Motorsports this year. And they're a team that I feel so at home with. They are true professionals in their field. They've been in the industry for a really long time. And prior to signing with JMF Motorsports, I actually had the opportunity to work really closely with them in filming the upcoming documentary that's coming out this year. And so I really got to know Danny Koch and Melanie Patterson. And I got to work with a lot of, some members that worked with their SRO team. And it was a really cool warm up to actually getting to work with them as an individual driver. And, you travel a lot with them. And I spent so much time during the off season, and they genuinely care about you. They care about you as an individual, as an athlete. Like, they look at all different facets of your life, and they check in on you and like, hey, Demi, like, how's it going? How's, everything with the family and this and that. And, even if there's a question that I have, like, they will take the time to go and like say, all right, let's hop onto the golf cart or in the rental car. Let's go out onto the track and let's spend this whole session talking about it. And really working on the mental aspect of racing too is something that the team works really hard at. And so it's just been really cool to work with a team that's just so professional and just so many different fronts of racing, the mental side of it, the human side of it, the team side of it. And I really do think that I have the strongest team. We have an amazing engineer. We have a fantastic mechanic. We don't cut corners, and we're out there to race, and we're out there to progress myself to the next level. So, we're not going to be cutting corners, and it's been a really cool time to be treated like a professional with a professional team. It's been awesome.
Do you want to, I don't know how much you can talk about this, but is there anything you could dive into regarding the documentary?
Yeah, so for the past 2 years, we've been filming a documentary called Full Throttle, and it should be coming out sometime soon. I don't have the exact release date, but hopefully sometime in May, which would be a really cool way to kickstart the season. And it will be on streaming services. And yeah, it actually got approved to go global, so that's really exciting. And it's a premium or premier documentary, meaning that it's the full-length documentary, so it's like the 2-hour documentary. And it showcases 3 Canadian race car drivers and kind of individually goes over our life and, what we've done to get to where we are, what we're currently doing. And then we all come together to do a 3-hour endurance race with the AMG GT4 together as a team, and kind of just where we went after that. So it was a really interesting experience to film it. And, there was no like cuts in quality. Like, this is the real deal. It's a legitimate documentary. So I'm excited and anxious to see it come out. And it's been really cool to have met the other drivers that I got to, drive with and get to know and kind of see where they went on to. And it was just a very interesting experience, and I will post about it when it comes out. So I can't really say where it's going to be released yet. So it's streaming services and on some TV networks.
Okay, well, everyone keep an eye out for that. That's gonna be pretty cool. Okay, so this is the hot lap section. So rapid fire Q&A. Some answers, if you want to dive into them a bit more detail, that's fine. But yeah, I'll start throwing them out. So the first one, do you prefer wet or dry races?
Oh, that's wet.
What's most important to you, corner entry, apex, or exit?
Exit, always exit.
Bucket list track to drive.
That's tough because I've already driven Spa and the Nürburgring, so that's 2 of the top ones. Monaco.
Okay, yeah, that's going to be a tough one to check off the list. Favorite Mario Kart character to play?
Hold on. Yoshi. I love Yoshi. He's so cute.
If you could use a Mario Kart power up on track in real life, what would it be?
Star power. It's like boost.
So last year you got to do a race at Spa in the Fun Cup, I believe, right? What was that experience like? I know it was pretty wild.
Yeah, racing Spa with the Fun Cup for the 25 hours of Spa. Honestly, it was like the craziest racing experience I've ever had. Like, there was 120 cars out on field, and they're all, for the most part, identical. And the cars themselves are actually pretty neat. Like, they look like these little, like, weird funky cars, but they're pretty legit. They got like sequential gearboxes, mono cockpit, so that was really cool. Driver changes were hilarious. So you'd pull in and they'd open both doors, and like one person is like ripping you out the other way, and the other one, before you're even out, is getting stuffed in. So it was really like funny in that aspect. But it was 7.5 hours of racing for myself in total. The team kind of baptized me by fire, if you will, and kind of gave me the most amount of stints, and I was happy to take them. And just drafting like 7 cars up Eau Rouge, and 200-meter break mark comes out, and you're just like ding 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 ding, everybody popping out trying to fight for the break zone. Like, it was just mental. Like, we were going like 3-4 wide in corners that had like no business fitting 3 or 4 cars wide in it. Like, it was just so insane. But you know what, the level of racing, though, although it was chaotic at times, you were with really good drivers. Like, everyone who you talk to raced IMSA, was a factory driver for something. Of course, you have the people out there doing it for fun, but the level of like the quality of competition that was there was also really good. And it was, no matter what hour, what lap, what point in the race you were at, you were battling somebody nonstop. There was a driver who I had some of the best racing battles ever. There's like a little chicane before you head, the straights where kind of the F1 pits usually are. And him and that whole lap, we were just passing each other into corners, back and forth. And through that chicane, like, we moved as like one car, and like just like missed each other by like half an inch. It was the craziest thing ever. And anyways, after that lap, he had to pit for his stop, and I still had a whole stint left to do. And he had come back to the shop to, come and talk to whoever it was he was battling against. And I was still out on track, but he came by later, and he was like, that was some of the best racing I've ever had. I've been doing this for so many years. And to see you, I thought it was going to be an angry Frenchman I was racing against. And it was so funny. Like, and so now, like, we're friends, and just to race Spa, to check that off your bucket list, it's such a beautiful track. There are so many corners and parts of that track that just make it so unique and so fun to drive. And to just do it in a race that is already extreme by being 25 hours, and to also do it with 120 cars, same cars, And so, yeah, it was good. We placed 26th out of 120 for our team. And I didn't even know, because they did the ceremony in French, and unfortunately I didn't speak French, so I didn't understand. My dad was there actually, and he was trying to say, I think they said your name, like, we don't know. But yeah, I won a trophy for being the second fastest female competing in it, which was pretty decent. The girl who came first, she's a professional rally racer and races GT4 cars professionally, and does the Fun Cup full time, and that was her home track. So whatever, if I'm going to lose to somebody, like, that's pretty the girl that came third, she's a full-time GT4 racer in Europe. So like, that small snippet just gives you kind of an example of the level of quality drivers that were actually out there racing. So yeah, it was an absolute blast.
That's awesome. It does sound incredible. So jumping into a bit more personal stuff. So who would you say is the most influential person in your life?
I mean, I want to say both my parents. I hold them at such a equal playing field, because they both have taught me so many different things that are equally as important to me in terms of being influential. With my dad, obviously, in terms of racing, he was the one that brought this passion to the home. He's the one that inspired driving and taught me how to drive manual at 10 years old, and, had us moving cars and working on cars with him. And aside from racing, his work ethic and his hustle, like, nothing came easy to my dad. And I was lucky enough where I got to grow up at an age where I was able to recognize some turning points for my dad, and to see a lot of his hard work pay off. And, he is just such a force when it comes to setting a goal, making it happen, and stopping at nothing until he gets it. And so that was always very inspiring to me. I always learned a lot of lessons, working beside him and seeing the benefits of hard work. And with my mom, she's inspired me to just be a kind person. My mom is very loving. She's not judgmental. She's a person who, if you were on the streets and she didn't even know you and you needed help, and, she would take you in and care for you. Like, she's an angel in that sense. And on the personality side of being humble and being grateful and counting your blessings and having faith and stuff like that, that's all my mom. And so really I feel like I'm this perfect combination. I'm perfect. No, I'm joking. I'm a perfect combination of like both the things that I love about both my parents. And I would say they are both super influential to me in different ways. But yeah, shout out to mom and dad.
So, what's been the biggest challenge for you in racing so far? Maybe something driving specific that you've really had to nail down and focus?
Obviously, aside from getting funding for racing, some of the biggest obstacles for me, especially now that I'm being treated like a professional and I'm able to compete at a professional level with a team who, invests in engineers and mechanics and everything like that. And we go over data, and it's one of the biggest things for me was really trying to find, the tenth of a second here and there, because with my racing, I got so comfortable with my regional racing where, you felt like you were pushing the car, like you felt like, you were giving it all on the track. But at this level, the minor mistakes that I might have made here and there at that level are a make or break now. Like you can't afford to do that. So really having to understand how to analyze data and, find where that is and analyze a track fully and try to figure out, well, if it falls off a bit this way, or, feeling for grip and, really trying to find that last push in the car. That was something that I didn't really, I guess you could say, do. I thought I was doing it, but I didn't have the data. I didn't have the coaches. I didn't have the engineer to bring it to my attention. So that's been a really cool, it's been a positive obstacle, because that's obviously what excels you as a driver and makes you, perform well. So it's been a positive obstacle, but I would say just really like finding the extra tenths in the car and, yeah, and reading data. Those were the two biggest learning curves for me.
That's a great answer. I think there shouldn't be a single driver out there, I mean, unless you're like a super max coming out of karting, that's at the amateur level working up, that wouldn't be able to relate to that, I feel, in some way, making a switch. Like I know, like I struggle with stuff like that, and I'm just in 1600.
At the regional level, or just any level where it's before actually racing homologated race cars where BOP matters and everything matters, it's one of those things where the people that are there are in a sense kind of struggling just to be there. They're like the warriors who work the 9 to 5, and they're lucky enough if they get one set of tires for the whole season and they're rotating them correctly. I was one of them. It was like, oh, this tire is quartered, put it in the right rear, like we don't use that side as much. Right? So you're out there and you're trying to manage your equipment, and at this level, pushing boundaries to go fast is you're risking the car a lot of the times in order to find that. So when you're at a regional level where if you crash this thing, you're the one in the garage for the next 3 weeks fixing it. You're the one that has to, work on the car and get it back up and going. All of a sudden now it's like, okay, a little bit of reserve. You're now like not forcing yourself to find really what the limits are. So it's regional racing, let alone being there to risk the car, get an engineer, get your own mechanic. It adds up, and it's not something really that we have at that level.
Yeah, which is good and bad to that, because you can learn a lot from doing that much stuff on your own, for sure. But yeah, when you make a transition into a top tier level, there's definitely a huge learning curve.
Yeah, learning how to punch on your own car is really important, I think. Gives you a good understanding understanding of just how a car works. Like, it was really cool, like stripping engines down with my dad. And, if something broke, it's like, all right, let's learn how to fix it. Like, who has this part, that part. So I learned a lot in that. So I think you're right with that. There's some cool learning points in that level.
Was that something you always kind of were interested in, wrenching on the car, or did it take a bit of an adjustment to get fully involved with that side of things? Because I'm personally like I'm not very good at that or into it. I can't find the drive that I have to like race or look at data to actually like get in on the car. So do you have any advice or anything for people that might be similar?
So I actually love working on the car. It was something that I always liked doing ever since I was little. It was a bonding thing for me and my dad. Like, I'd always be in the garage, and even if it was just handing him tools. And then as I got kind of old enough, I would see his hands like not being able to fit in certain places to get, like a screw or a nut or a bolt, whatever. And I would use the excuse of like, hey dad, I got thin hands, like let me go and do it. And so he would slowly start, passing things off to me. And I was finally able to like do little things or wrap headers because my fingers could fit to do it, and like stuff like that. So I like working on cars. I like getting my hands dirty. I like being fully immersed in it. Now with the AMG GT4, I am super happy to not touch the car. I don't want anything to do with it. Like, I don't want to, do something, go out there and race that, knowing that my hands turned a wrench on that. So, but yeah, I like it. And I think when you have a passion or you're passionate about what you do, and driving is it, you know, I'm passionate about cars. Like, I was always into cars, and then I got passionate about, seeing how hard I could push that car. And it kind of just like it's in my head, it's like it's just part of it. Like, that's my passion. So we should like learn how to work on them and see how they operate. And it's just like a full circle thing for me. Not that I'm great at it, but I enjoy doing it.
Describe your experience obtaining sponsorship and maybe some of the wins you've had on that side of things and some of the challenges you face and advice you'd have to others looking to find it.
So sponsorship is obviously a major part in what we do. I sometimes feel like we spend more time finding sponsorships than we do actually driving the car. And I learned very early into my career how to kind of work sponsorship and try to find sponsorship, because racing at a regional level, you don't have much to market with. Like, we don't race major race weekends. We don't have the spectator count that major series do. And we are not televised. We're not on streaming, like nothing. We don't have any of that. So I learned early in that I needed to build myself as a brand, and I needed to be the one that like I needed to be able to offer things that I could do for the company. So often when I would go to a company and approach for sponsorship, it was kind of this narrative of, if your company could use anything right now, what is it? Like, do you guys need help in sales? Are you guys searching for content creation? Do you guys need people to represent your company at events? Like, if there's anything that you feel is a weakness right now, what is it? And so, that's when you start opening up doors to see how you can be of value to them. And that's a really big thing. Like, you need to offer value, because I mean, I think that regional racing is fantastic. It's great. And then I'm not saying that it didn't offer value, but it wasn't the type of value that companies want to invest money in per se. So really going in there and asking, what can I do for you? Okay, so you guys need sales. Give me a wholesale account. Let me start selling parts for you. So I was hustling like car parts. Like, that was part of the negotiation. And I got, good at doing public speaking so that I could represent their company at major events. Either it was doing speaking or actually traveling. So for example, I used to go to SEMA every year, and I would sell product. Like, I would be at the booths talking about the product as if I was one of the people that owned the company. Like, I knew all the ins and outs of it. And that came with a lot of research and time studying it. But you have to bring value, and you have to find out what that company is lacking and what you can provide for them. And it's about wearing many different hats. It's like, oh, now I'm sales Demi. Oh, now I'm, public speaking Demi. Oh, now I'm like, like whatever you want, like, respectfully. whatever your company needs, like I can probably find a way to do it. So it's been really cool working sponsorship because I feel like it's made me very well rounded and very, adverse in so many different things. However, it is hard. Like you have to have thick skin because a lot of companies are just going to shut you down. And that's okay. You just kind of look at it and say, thank you. Maybe you don't see value in it now, but maybe one day when I approach you again, I can build something where I'm of value to you or whatever, move on, however you please. But you have to be okay with being said no to. You have to be okay with, working pretty hard. But I think the number one thing is just offer companies value.
Do you have any advice to give to younger drivers that maybe are regionals and karting that are looking to make the step into professional? How they might achieve that and what maybe they should be doing right now?
It's always good advice to tell people who are coming up through the ranks, treat yourself as a professional from now. You know, hold yourself as a professional when you're in the paddock, and on social media, be hyper aware that everything you comment, everything you post, everything you send, that's all in the internet forever. And that's a representation of you. And it's tough because young kids now have access to all of that and it's so easy. And I think about it now, like if me and my friends had social media back in the day, like what would we have posted? Like would that, like, you have to treat yourself as a professional from now because that's where you want to be. So when you're in the paddock, wear your team shirt, wear, your look professional, speak professionally. And if you have companies that are working with you and say the sponsorship is maybe just in parts, you get cost on parts, it's not a major sponsorship, there's no monetary value. Take that opportunity and start building off of that. Go out of your way, under promise and over deliver when you have that, because now all of a sudden it's just that's free experience, really. Like if you have a company, start making videos for them, post with them, and go out of your way to work it into conversation with people so that you can drive them business. And this is only going to help get you into that mentality of I'm a professional, this is how I manage sponsorships, and although I'm not there right now, I'm doing all the groundwork to start building myself up to be there. So when you're there, you're polished, you know how to speak professionally, you know how to manage sponsors and make them happy, you know how to hold yourself in the paddock and in the social media eye, because all of that's really important. And so, yeah, treat yourself like a professional and go above and beyond for the people who are willing to help you at that phase. And yeah, there's so many other things, but if there's anything really that you can do that's free advice, is just that.
To wrap it up, we kind of give the floor to you. Anything you got going on in your life you want to promote or anyone you want to shout out?
I mean, obviously, a massive shout out to JMF Motorsports. Thank you for seeing value in me. Thank you for bringing me on board for the 2023 season and hopefully beyond. I'm super excited to be racing with FEL SCCC. Thank you to everyone who's made this possible. John Farrow, who's really helping Canadian racers and, just giving people an opportunity to have a chance at racing. And it's going to be a good season, and just, yeah, shout out to FEL Motorsports for making this happen and everybody behind the scenes working hard. And I think one thing that I think people need to give shout outs and recognize all of the volunteers and the corner marshals and everybody who works the grounds at any of the racetracks that you work at or help, manage flags and make the day go by and so that you're safe on track. We appreciate you guys more than you know. We love each and every single one of you, and we thank you because without you, we wouldn't be racing. So that's probably it.
Yes, 100%. It's funny that you're the first person to shout them out, but I do agree. I think they're probably some of the most valuable people at a racetrack. So
yeah, and shout out to Connor. He would do a race with me. I'd do a race with you too.
Where can people follow you online? What's your Instagram handle? Or
I am at Demi Chalkias on everything. I made it simple for you guys. So Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Just type my name in and yeah, follow along. I hope that I do well for you guys this year, and I hope to see you all at the track. So yeah, Demi Chalkias.
All right, Demi, thanks for coming on. This has been great. We'll see you soon in May.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Still going bad on you anyway. Whoa, 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 whoa. I can feel like 80 rats in my Marys. Me and Drizzy back to back is getting scary.